So I'm going to talk about how this might work with regard to any old individual change, give you an example from, sort of a generic example from coaching, and then talk about how the unified mindfulness methods, I think, map onto this beautifully. And Shinzen and I have had this conversation. He goes, oh yeah, Meg, that's cool. Like, it's not his thing, but it's cool. So you can see on the left-hand side this little bit of a plateau, and we come across a bump, which is a left-hand bump, and we want to get to this higher, newer visionary area. And we kind of have this idea that we can kind of just jump from A to B without doing the descent. So if I'm working with somebody, and for those of you who are in therapeutic or helping traditions might find something kind of similar in your work, I don't know. But if I'm working with somebody, they'll come along and they'll say, here's what's up and here's what's not working for me. And we'll try and elicit, so what would you like to have happen? And they'll articulate some version of the right-hand bump. And then we'll work to create a metaphor that kind of describes what they're doing now that's getting in the way. So how their past is past patterns, their ways of thinking, their ways of being, might sort of hinder. I was working with one individual recently who's, again, I often work with people in leadership roles, but that doesn't particularly matter, who was kind of used to having a one-pointed focus and being very special in their area, technical specialization in the media industry, and was now sort of moving into a more managerial leadership role, and was used to kind of being right and being looked up to and kind of being worshipped and having a couple of big tools. So we use the metaphor of a unicorn, you know, kind of worshipped, special, but that didn't work for where they wanted to be in the future. So, you know, looking at what are some of those ways of the unicorn, what are the ways of holding yourself, of charging forward, of waiting to be asked for your expertise that you had. Becoming aware of the ways of assumptions that you have that drive you forward. And these turn up in your seeing, in your hearing, and absolutely in your feeling. So becoming aware of that, becoming aware of the holes that you typically stumble into. That's a huge part of becoming aware of stuff. You know, it's worked for me so far, but it's not working for me anymore. So you need a way to suspend those patterns and see with fresh eyes. Look with a deeper kind of curiosity. Can you see the sensory clarity here? Sensing more deeply into what's going on, untangling some of the ways that you have of holding things together. And finally, when you're able to see some of the threads of what's going on for you and how embedded that is. In my case, it's often been various different kinds of projections. And every time I see it, you know, every time somebody pisses me off, particularly if it's a family member, I think, oh, you know what, Meg, you do that too, a little bit. That's why you can recognize it, because you see it in somebody else. That's why it hooks you. And so down somewhere at the bottom of the U is what he will call connecting the source. Does this sound familiar? And from this place, you can be fully present. But you're present without an answer. You maybe even have dropped the question. This is the place where something comes out of nothing. And then you're in a position where you can try out acting in new kinds of ways, but you can only act in new kinds of ways when you've deeply let go, at least to a certain extent, some of the patterns that you have. And then you can begin to say, well, what do I want from here? And what's going to be important? Both for me, a lot of Scharmer's work is done in community settings, organizational settings, so this is done collectively. So beginning to have these little niggles of what's coming next. And I know I've talked with some of you who are in the artistic field of beginning to say, what am I sitting on? What's wanting to come out of me now? Well, So ideally that comes out of the right-hand side of the U curve. And then beginning to enact that more fully, connecting to both your head, your heart, and your hands. And then finally fully embodying it. And yes, performing in a new kind of way, but in a different way.